I'm going to welcome everybody. Thank you for watching and tuning in to this episode of Wading Through the Waters podcast. My name is Josh, and I am excited to be joined by Amanda. Amanda, how are you today?
I am well. How are you?
Good. Yeah, doing well. I feel like we've got a lot to talk about and a lot of things that I'd love to hear from you. I know that you are one of our telehealth providers, and so I don't get to see you as often. And with these next couple of episodes we're filming, I'm focused on getting some of the telehealth providers and hearing from them and letting our people in the local area know that, hey, these people are also a part of the team and can offer lots of services to you and in our local community. So excited to have you here. We've got a lot that I want to get into, so I think we'll just get into it and start by talking about you and talk about you and your background. Feel free to go into this as much as you'd like, but I'd love to just know maybe your background as a provider, your background of you as a person, and let's start there.
Me as a person. Okay. It feels very loaded. I don't know why. I don't think I'm that interesting, probably why. I'm an Eastern North Carolina girl, born and raised in a small town outside of Goldsboro.
Okay.
I no longer live there. And I think that's about it. Again, I'm not super interesting. Sorry.
I think most people wouldn't know a lot about you, and that's why I'm excited to learn more. So how did you start becoming a counselor, a therapist? What do you like to be called? A provider? I know that's what we say in the office.
It doesn't matter to me. I think I'm more interested in what I don't want to be called in life.
Okay, that's fair.
So, anything, counselor, therapist, it doesn't.
Okay.
I don't care.
So how did you get started in that? Obviously, I can see your degrees behind you. And so where did you...
I know, they make me look smart, right? They're totally staged. How did I get started? I was thinking about that as I was preparing for this, and I don't, again, sorry to be kind of a letdown, not such a great story. I did my undergrad in Carolina, and I double majored because my real passion, I wanted to be a professor of religious studies, religious history. I'm a super nerd, and it just was fun. And I was on that path until I had lunch with a TA who said, we had the most, she was really excited. There were the most job opportunities for religious studies professors in the United States. And I was like, that's so cool. How many? And it was like 4. So my dreams just died. And I was like, I guess I need to lean towards psychology. And I think we're all called to do something specific. And I think the road that we get there is so unique, and how that sort of opened to us. And my path has just been, the answer just hits me, like even choosing Carolina. I vividly remember looking at my best friend at the time, and I just looked at her and I said, I'm going to Carolina. And she was like, okay. And I'm good for you. Yeah. And I'm like, you don't understand. That just kind of came to me. And so sort of the same with going to counseling. I was walking through the quad, just kind of doing some circles, and it just hit me. This is what I'm going to do. And it has truly been my calling, my passion. And I love the job.
That's great.
I love the interactions, and it's really neat.
Yeah. And I know that sometimes you don't realize that you've stumbled into what you're doing until you look back. And that's why I try to ask, because oftentimes your whole life can really feel weird, because I'm sure you didn't grow up thinking I'm going to be a counselor,
No. And my personality, Josh, we don't get the lunchroom, so we don't get to know each other, but my personality is not, I'm not a super empath. I don't reek with love and compassion. I'm just kind of am who I am. And so to be here is a little unique, just because my personality is not, I don't know if you do Enneagram. I don't know if any listeners follow Enneagram. Most counselors are 2. I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not a 2.
Okay, I'm a 2. So what are you?
I'm a little afraid to tell you.
Okay. That's fine.
No, I actually, my Enneagram journey, I'm not ashamed of it. I'm an 8.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting.
I'm an 8, right. And so I love where I've landed, especially when we get into talking about EFT, because there's room for me. There's room. There's purpose in this world for 8s, and we keep the world turning, and it's, a journey of love and acceptance. And so I think to be here and be an 8, it feels kind of counterintuitive sometimes, but I'm not ashamed of it. Here I am.
Well, and I think that's interesting because you're talking about different personality types, and you said you're not really an empath, but I'm sure over time you've kind of developed your own space, your own way of counseling people. And I think that's what's cool about, specifically even like Peaceful Waters. There's a vast array of counselors who can help certain people well. And,
sure.
and you are able to counsel people much differently than any of the other providers at Peaceful Waters. And I think that's really special, and can really help different people. And that's what makes, different counselors better with certain situations, with certain scenarios. And so, yeah, you mentioned EFT. Let's go into that a little bit. The EFT is a special treatment that you offer. Is that correct? A treatment, you would say?
Treatment model. Okay. It's a specific model.
Okay, so yeah, let's hear what does EFT stand for?
Okay, let me caveat this whole conversation with my goal here is to just get people curious and help them be more aware of the model. Yes. I love the model. And I will say all that to say I come in this conversation very humbly. I am not the one to make it technical and really explain it, because that's just not where I am. So by all means, anybody listening, if you really want the ins and outs of EFT explained, please go look it up. There are wonderful presenters who explain it so much better than I'm going to. So I'm going to give you like the super abridged cliff notes, and I'm going to do the best I can with that. EFT stands for Emotionally Focused Therapy. It started in the 80s. It's based on, it's an integrative model, and I could tell you who it's based on. People may or may not care, but it's mostly based on Bowlby's science of human attachment. And it says that we are all beings who are born and meant to have attachment and connection with other people. Okay. And so Sue Johnson and a couple of her colleagues created the model in the 80s, and it has evolved over time. And it was designed around working with couples. In the past few years, the research is really moving to help specialize it to either with individuals. So you now have EFIT, which is Emotionally Focused Individual Therapy. You have EFFT, which is Emotionally Focused Family Therapy. There's EFT integrated with trauma. And people more recently, as EMDR becomes really popular, they're trying to figure out how to integrate these two models. And that would be a marriage made in heaven. But the premise of the model, again, is that we are designed to connect with people, and that ruptures happen in connection. And that when a rupture happens, because it's so painful, we build protections to make sure that that pain doesn't reoccur. In a marriage, what this means is that when you experience pain with your partner, you're supposed to trust that then the marriage kind of evolves into some maladaptive patterns of, Sue Johnson calls it a tango. And if you think about anybody who's married or been in a long-term relationship, that's what it feels like. You're kind of, marriages, it waves. There are real good highs, there are real low lows. And that's sort of this dance we do with our partner where we're really trying to build connection. But whenever we experience that rupture and we go in to protect ourselves, what we end up finding is that if we're not careful, it can have the opposite effect of what we're really trying to do. It can push our partner away. So what EFT does is I'm going to get excited now because I love EFT.
Yeah.
It gives the therapist opportunities to create in session a chance to have corrective emotional experiences. And so it gives us a chance, and what that will do actually is create some safety. Because every time there's a rupture, what that says in our attachment is, I can't trust you here. Well, now I can't trust you here, and now I can't trust you here. And so, like when we have a couple in a state of disconnection, what they're saying is, there's this person that I want to trust, and I just can't. Now, and that causes distress.
Now, let me ask, just real quick. When you say a rupture, well, give us some examples. Is that infidelity? Is it what is a rupture for?
It could be anything that has caused some deep pain in the relationship. It has any message that a partner walks away with where that says, I can't trust my partner here, is a rupture. And I mean, infidelity is an easy one to spot.
That's what I was thinking,
it could be anything. It could be, I don't know, my partner took $100 and spent it on lottery tickets and didn't tell me when we were trying to save for this house. It could be anything.
Yeah.
Anything that's really painful.
Okay. So now this happens, and I want to talk about practically what EFT looks like. Okay. So a couple comes to you and maybe they've had some experiences, like you said, a rupture. And of course, EFT is a model, right? So I'm also processing this as you're talking about it. It's a model of how you want to walk maybe that couple through healing from what they've had occur in their relationship. What does that practically look like for them? What are you doing practically to help them? Maybe you're saying certain things. You're trying to get them to see certain things. I'm curious to know what it looks like for a couple who walks into your office and is having a really hard time.
So EFT, it's based on 3 stages. And the first stage we want to do, when you say, what does it practically look like? It's going to look different for every couple. Because the first stage that we address is de-escalation. And de-escalation for any couple can look very different. A couple can come in screaming at each other. That's a very clear sign that the couple's escalated, name calling, blaming, all the things. But then there are couples who come in and they're not talking at all. And that couple is just as escalated. So the first thing we do is de-escalate the couple. And we do that by mapping out their cycle. And so what we do is help them understand what their triggers are, what their protective moves are, when they're triggered, how it's bouncing off the other partner, how it perpetuates. We do this infinity loop. That's why I'm doing my hand like this, how it perpetuates this idea of distancing. And so we grab what we're trying to do, because it's emotionally focused, is in mapping out the process. What we're trying to do is help them understand what emotions are floating around. And most people come in and very easy to say, I'm angry. They did this, they're doing this, this happened, whatever. Partner cheated on me. I'm angry. Very easy to identify. But what we know about anger is it never, ever travels alone. So in de-escalation, what we want to do is help a partner figure out what emotion is in the passenger seat with anger. And we take that emotion and we expand it. We create safety in the relationship so that the couple can expand it. And then we organize it.
Okay.
And by organizing it, we give permission for that emotion to exist in the relationship. And in the organizing and in that existence, then we offer corrective emotional experience, because now that partner can say, yes, I'm angry at this. I'm angry because it sent me this message that I don't matter. And when I feel like I'm in this place and I don't matter, I'm alone in this world. This is the person who's supposed to be by my side, and I keep getting this message. There is, again, a rupture in the relationship. But what we've done is we've given it a name. And by expanding that emotion, now the partner has the opportunity to hear this message. And this is doesn't always translate this easy, but it gives the opportunity for the partner to say, I never meant for you to be alone. My goal here was to never send you this message. And to help meet that partner and hold them in that space and hold their feelings so that they can turn towards each other and towards the relationship for comfort instead of feeling like they have to protect each other or protect themselves from the pain that exists in the relationship.
Okay. Wow. So it sounds like there's a lot more to it than just come in, stop doing this, start doing this.
So I love that you say that. Thank you for reminding me. One of the first things I say to any couple who comes in is I am not a negotiator and I'm not a referee.
Okay.
My goal here is I'm not going to negotiate who's doing domestic responsibilities. I'm not going to help you budget. Like, I'm not going to do these things. What I am going to do is help you guys really connect and understand as you're experiencing these feelings, as you're trying to navigate this stuff, that these messages are flying around. They're not getting caught. They're not getting caught properly. And then when the message falls flat on the ground, I'm going to help you understand why you're backing further and further away from something that you actually find very valuable.
Wow.
EFT has been explained as one of the easiest models, but when you start to do it, it's very complex because what we allow is that everybody has their truth, and you get to have your truth in a relationship. Sue Johnson says, and I can tie in being an 8 here because she gave me permission to be an 8 in this model. But she says that behavior exists. I'm really paraphrasing, so someone who really they're going to be able to rake me over the coals for this. But she says all behaviors serve a purpose and it has meaning. It's meaningful in a relationship, right, wrong, good, or bad. What I love about EFT is nobody's the bad guy. Where I feel like, I don't want to go on a soapbox, but I guess I can.
Yeah.
Where I feel like our profession sometimes really has done an injustice to couples is what you said, that we misunderstand our role as, again, helping people navigate and problem solve. When we do that, all we're doing is misattuning with someone in that relationship. So when we work for de-escalation, we're working for attunement. Attunement says, I see you. And I get you, and you have truth here, and it makes sense. And now what I want to do is help you be able to translate this to your partner so your partner can see it, and it can make sense to your partner and in your relationship. That's all we're doing.
Yeah.
So where I feel like we've done an injustice, again, and trying to problem solve and misattuning with people is that sometimes in people's best effort to do marriage therapy, somebody walks out the bad guy. And that's shaming. And I can't expect anybody to have growth if they're feeling shamed.
Right. Wow.
And that is part of my passion for EFT. Nobody should feel like whatever move they're doing, they need to understand where it's coming from, what purpose it serves for them. And then they should get to decide if they need to continue to do it.
Yeah. And you can't really get to that place until you do the work that you're talking about, until you, like you talk about, de-escalating, organizing. And I want to make sure I recapped that. What were the 3 stages that you said? You de-escalate is the first one.
You de-escalate, and then the second stage is really about connection and attunement in the relationship and exploring.
Okay.
And then the third stage, don't fault me for this, I can't name it off the top of my head. Most couples don't make it to the third stage because by the time they get to the second, they're feeling so good and connected
Interesting.
That's usually when they end. And that's okay. It's a good
Sure.
place for them to end because there's enough safety there that they really get to explore vulnerability with their partner.
Okay.
It's a good place to be.
Okay. Well, and that's
So I know I should have that. I'm so sorry.
that's perfectly fine. I just wanted to know, what the work really is, right? Because I think most people don't see that. And I think when we can talk about it and say, this is really what we're going to do. We're actually going to try and take some of these issues and say, hey, what's really bothering you as a result of what happened, right? And we want to take those things and say, let's really get to the bottom of this. And when you can do the work, when you can open up in that regard, you'll actually get to a place that you can connect with your partner, that you can connect
because because your once you expand that emotion, then your partner can come in and join you there. And that's what think about, again, you're married.
Yeah.
Think about the last time your wife really hurt your feelings. Sure. And how did she repair that? Usually it's not just, and think about the impact. Okay, I'm sorry I hurt your feelings. Well, okay. But if she could come in and say, you know what, I realized when I said this, that it had this impact on you and it hurts me because that's not what I want for you. I love you too much to let you sit in that pain.
Yeah.
And that's the sort of vulnerability and connection we're trying to do.
Yeah, that's true. I think the first thing that comes to my mind is just what you talked about with being seen and being heard. And yes. I know that oftentimes when we're angry at each other, it's almost impossible to be truly seen and truly heard. And so if I've expressed anything to my wife that's really important to me, but she's angry about something, or she can't look at it from my perspective, I know that we're not going to get anywhere, and
absolutely. Yeah.
So oftentimes there's things that you just don't understand that they're getting in the way. And sometimes it takes somebody to really look at it and say, from your perspective as a third party, and to say, have you thought about this being a problem from you connecting? Have you thought about this, being an area where you can stop maybe and again, not to point fingers. I know you were talking about not having a bad guy, but more just to say, have you guys recognized some of the patterns that you have, or the things that are getting in the way of that connection, right?
Can I make this a little bit more practical?
Sure, I would love it.
Okay. Because yes, you're close, but I want to make sure I'm super clear here, because again, it's not about, hey, look at your partner. Do you realize that you're not listening because you're angry? But it's more about, let me get, again, if I can start with where you might be in that process. And so it would be, help me understand, so you felt anger. It would be really expanding it. What happens in anger? Well, when I'm angry, my body lights up, I get really tense, and all I want to do is shut down. Okay. All right. So tell me, and again, you're expanding. So your body's really reacting to this. So tell me what happens. You want to shut down. Tell me about that. And then it might look like, well, because I just can't take it anymore. Tell me about that. So you're really kind of slicing it down. Well, because when I get in this place and she has said to me that, or she shut the door in my face one more time, it's just let me know she just doesn't care. Okay. So when you find yourself in this anger, there's a little bit more to it. And that here, what you're saying is, you can't handle that your wife's cutting you off here. Because what you're saying is, you're dysregulated and you want to reach her, but she's cut you off. And where does that leave you? And so somebody might say, it leaves me feeling really alone. Yeah. So as you talk through this and you really slice it down, somebody starts in anger, like they're posturing and they're really upset. And as you can really attune to what their process is and what's going on, their whole body relaxes. And now we've introduced this vulnerability. I feel alone. So now we can take this and we can put meaning to it. What's so hard about feeling alone? Well, I actually really love her. I don't want to be alone in this. This relationship matters to me. And then you turn into the partner and you're bringing the partner in. Partner's mad. What do you hear? And so partner can then kind of attune to what they said. Well, I heard him say that he doesn't want to be alone. What's it like to hear that? Well, I didn't want him to be alone. Okay, so tell me about that. And so then you're slicing down their anger so they get to a point where they can say, my goal here wasn't to make my partner feel alone. It was in my own pain, my own fear that they were going to leave me here. So I beat them to the punch.
Right.
And shut the door because I can't take that rejection. So then you put meaning to the rejection. Why is that rejection why is that even that? Why is it even there? Because I care about them. So you have people come in who've been married for years, and you got the kids and the bills and all the things that naturally create disconnection. And people are able to slow down their process to be able to hear a new message. I didn't know you cared about me like that.
Right.
I thought you gave up on me years ago. I didn't give up on you. I've been pissed because you left me behind, and I wanted us to be a partnership.
Yeah.
It's amazing how when we get in our cycle and families and relationships, we can't hear. We can't hear those messages. And that's what I mean by they fall dead in the water. So on one hand, again, do I want the partners to understand their impact on their partner? Yeah. But before they can do that, they have to understand the impact on themselves. They have to be able to organize their own emotions going into whatever's happening in the relationship. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Does that make it a little bit different?
It does. No, it really is insightful, and it really opens up to the dynamics of a relationship, and it has me thinking too. One of the questions I had was, who is EFT for, right? Who is it for? We talked about a relationship that's been hurt. Is it specifically for couples? And if so, does it work with just one couple, just one of the people in the relationship? Like, is it a relational based therapy, or can you do this model with just one person who's there for therapy? I know so many times in a relationship, right? One couple is much more willing than the other. Or do you think that's true?
That's a loaded question. Is one okay? Let me break down all the questions.
Yeah.
Who's it for? Everybody.
Okay.
It's for everybody.
Yeah, because we talked a lot about couples. Because I was just curious,
Well, the model was originally designed for couples, and most of the research to date has gone into researching how it affects couples and the effectiveness for working with couples. Now they're expanding it, and they're using EFT with individuals. And I use some of the same techniques. I don't want to get too complicated. I was going to make that really complicated. I'm not going to. But it's for anybody. Okay. And when people come in, you have one who's more motivated than the other, I'm going to say that can be true sometimes. And sometimes it can look like someone's more motivated.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is when we have couples come in and they've been at it for a long time, what usually happens is you have a pursuer-withdrawer effect.
Okay.
Where you've got one person who, in their distress, they pull away. And as that person pulls away, then you've got the other one who's pursuing them because they want the connection. Sure. Does the withdrawal mean that the person's not motivated to work on the relationship? No.
Oh, yeah.
The withdrawal means it's hard and I can't tolerate it. It really has nothing to do with motivation. With our withdrawers, we have to do a little bit more work because, they are deep in their shell. Their protection is, I've been hurt. What is it? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Yeah. They live on that. Right. So they're, I'm not doing that again. And they're not going to expose themselves. Again, does that mean they're not committed to the relationship? No, it means they don't know how to go back in and practice vulnerability. That's one of the hardest things we do is we ask a couple to get back in the ring.
Wow.
And the ring is a scary place.
Yeah. That's true. That's so true, because just getting yourself back in is also a big step, you know? It's also a courageous thing to do, because you're saying that you're still committed and that you are willing to do what it takes to repair, heal, and grow in the things that have been really hard, I'm sure.
Yeah. And it ends up I mean, you know, again, if you've been at it for a while and you've been hurt, it becomes a stalemate. Like, you know, so you have people kind of coming in, and the sentiment is, well, I will if you will. Well, okay, I will if you will. And so it just defines the risk there. How do I know I can put myself and invest into this if I don't know what I'm going to get in return? I mean, it's scary. Yeah.
It is. And that leads me to what I was having at the end of this EFT section, talking about, I think I'm going to combine two of these questions that I had. One of them was about the benefits or the effects of actually taking that step and saying, hey, this is something that I think can help us, right? Or me, you know, this is something that I think can help me. So what are the benefits of that? And also, what do you say to the people that are skeptical of it? I think those two questions kind of go hand in hand, because you're talking about how oftentimes, what am I going to gain out of doing all this work? You know, or is it going to work? Or, you know, is it worth it? And so what do you say to the people who are skeptical about getting back in the ring, who are skeptical about taking that next step in really opening back up to learn and grow?
I think the first thing I would want to do, if I could have the discussion face to face, is honor the risk and just honor the fear and say, you know, I hear it. I hear that it's there, and it's everything that keeps you grounded. And the fear is the thing, you know, as you're navigating, you know, we'll kind of go with this waters theme. And in marriage, I think you find yourself, as you're navigating the issues and the troubles, it can start to feel like you're drowning. Most couples, they don't get the luxury, so to speak, of coming in purist, like, well, I only have to worry about my partner. There's kids, there's jobs. Again, there's other stressors that are coming into this. And the one place where you want to find your solitude is now in trouble. So on one hand, I get the fear. The other hand, I would say EFT offers, from my experience, the best opportunity to create a different experience. It is proven that if we can catch our emotions and understand the role they play in the whole process, we have a better tool. We're better equipped to make a different decision there when the emotions come up. Is it scary? Absolutely. Does it feel good? Not all the time. Yeah. Does it offer a different opportunity to get, I don't want to say get back where you were with your partner, but to re-experience that connection? It absolutely does. It absolutely does.
And gives you some tools to respond differently, to interact differently. Because oftentimes too, we talk about the cycle that you're in, the work, the school, and everything, and sometimes what you need is something different. You need something that can break that constant cycle of fighting or constant cycle of whatever, and sometimes you just don't have those tools yet, right?
Absolutely. And I'll add to that, it gives you the opportunity for success. Because so often in our relationship, and sometimes in life, all we get are messages: you're doing it wrong, you're doing it wrong, you're doing it wrong. And it gives the opportunity to both give and receive a different message. And when people feel, this is again, another reason why I love EFT, is that it pulls a behavior component in. When people have a positive experience, they're going to repeat the behavior that got them there.
Right. Mm-hmm. That's true.
Right? It's motivating. It's highly motivating. So if I see I can make this move and it has this impact on my partner, it ultimately benefits me, I'm going to keep doing the new move.
Yeah. You learn a lot from that type of work, and you learn a lot from that type of understanding that you didn't have before. And I think that can help a lot of people, you know, and a lot of couples and a lot of people who just don't know where to go. So
absolutely,
that's I'm glad that we were able to talk about EFT. I know that's one of the things that you obviously are passionate about, and I'd love to switch gears a little bit and talk about your passion for veterans and your work with veterans. I know you've had a good amount of experience working with veterans, right? Did that start somewhere? Is there a place that maybe you started working with veterans, or has it just been maybe a client here or there, and then now you've just kind of discovered you like talking with them, you like understanding their issues?
So I think my experience and my passion, it started actually when I was working in my master's program. I did my practicum and internship on the Navy base. So my experience actually started working with active duty service members. And so I had that background. And then I met my husband in an active duty. I was working actually with the Coast Guard and met him. And so there was my little bit more permanent introduction to active duty experiences. And so we got married, and when I moved to California at the time does not love LPCs, and so I had a hard time finding a job. I ended up working at Navy College, which offered a different experience and just different interactions, again, with active duty sailors at the time. And then I worked at the VA for a short time. And so there, you know, naturally the switch was to working with veteran population. And so I think to answer your question, where did my passion come from? I think because of my personality, it's a culture I think I can definitely identify with. Can I use the word salty? Maybe I could like salty feels a little bit more comfortable for me. And then of course, I mean, I just have a heart and spouses as well. It's a very unique, challenging lifestyle.
Yeah. I know that we live in an area. How far do you live from Moyock, where Peaceful Waters is?
About an hour.
Okay, so you are in the general area.
I'm in and so in the Hampton Roads area.
Yeah, so you're in the area with Coast Guard, Navy, and I'm sure some others that I'm not even thinking about. But
Marines and Air Force. We live under Air Force flight line. Yeah.
Interesting. And so I know I interact with a good amount of veterans here at the church that I work at, as well as Peaceful Waters. And you know, there are a lot of heavy things that they've obviously gone through. There's also a lot of things they go through when they're not active duty, of course. And I hear a lot about that, and I'm sure you do as well. And I'd love to know from your perspective, what are some of the biggest issues that veterans face, and what are some of the biggest things they have to go through that are, I think most people don't think about that. You know, I want to bring some awareness to the issues that you see as a counselor.
I don't think my husband's actually going to listen to this, so I think I can talk pretty candidly more about personal experience. Because my husband's now a retiree. And I wanted to say I walked into his retirement prepared, like I'm a therapist. Like I got this. Like we can do this. It was hard. It was hard watching the transition. Not that I think he mourned the loss of, being active duty, but because I don't think he realized, let's see if I can say this that makes sense, how much of his identity was rolled up with what he had achieved in life. And he had worked up the ranks and had, recognition and was known in the community and was a specialist, if you will, for it was called on, was important. And then one day he just was a dad at home. And it was hard. It was hard. Wow. And he was very clear he did not want to roll into working as a contractor. He really wanted the separation. Okay. And I don't know, I can't speak to if you roll into, because a lot of service members, when they retire, they roll into contracting. And I don't know if that makes it easier. I don't know. But for him to go from kind of having this stature, if you will, to being a civilian, it was tough. Yeah. It was tough. We can laugh about it now because that's kind of what we do, but we call it the year of finding himself. And I'll say, yeah, you found yourself in the recliner. That's where you found yourself.
Oh, wow.
But, he's on his feet again, and it's obviously in a different place, but that was not an immediate transition. It was not. It was very scary. And I've worked with active duty service members who were making the transition. There was a lot of fear there, which is the now what. Not only now what, but how is it going to be different? People who get used to the lifestyle really thrive in the structure. And the civilian world's just not as structured. Right. And that's hard. Yeah. So, what are some of the challenges? I think that's one of them, is just kind of losing that identity instantaneously and being older and feeling like you have to start all over again. It doesn't feel good. In addition to what I think for people who were exposed to trauma,
of course,
that's something that I don't think we can understand if we didn't live it.
Yeah. And what does the support look like? I'm pretty removed, so as somebody who works in the mental health field, as somebody who's a military spouse, what does the support look like? And I'm bracing for impact from what I've heard.
And you are asking me on this week where I have been on the phone with the VA for hours trying to help my father, which was not fun. I think the support is there in theory and intention, and I think it actually turning into fruition is such a maddening experience. Yeah. Now, I can say that's through the VA. If we wanted to use our retiree benefits and call, I say that. Sorry, Josh.
No,
this could just open up a soapbox. Because as a consumer, I understand. I mean, TRICARE has been pretty good to us. As a provider, TRICARE is not. There's not a whole lot of incentive to work with the population. So there's a lot of. I guess my point is, I don't want to throw anybody or any entity under the bus. There's a lot of systemic problems. Yeah. A lot of systemic problems. One of them, of course, naturally is there's a mental health is still very stigmatized. And I was thinking about this earlier. I think we ask service members to do two different things. They can't function on emotions and finish the mission. They can't do it. They have to stay cognitive to finish the mission.
Wow. I'd never thought about that.
And then we ask them to come home and turn the emotions back on. This is why the marriages fall apart, by the way. This is why there's such a high divorce rate among military families. Then they come home from whatever, from short-term, long-term deployment, TDY, anything. Yep. And we ask them to turn the emotions back on. And so we're asking people to flip-flop back and forth, to do something that even us trained people struggle to do at times, right? Like, I can relate to that. I have to turn off my emotions to do my job sometimes, right? I'm way more prepared than the average person to go turn it back on when I need to. But for somebody who's never been trained to do it, how do we ask them to go back and forth in that? And so then you've got these people who live in this kind of confusing culture. Turn it off, get the mission done. That's what's most important. People still have feelings, and they're not really, I think the confusing part is the now what? When do I turn it on? What do I turn on? How, what do I do here?
Right. That is, again, I said, I tried interrupting, I shouldn't have, but I really didn't think about that, the switch that you have to make, the transition. And I think oftentimes too, I know that in my personal experience, a lot of men and women who've joined the military, of course it's by their choice, but there's a lot, in my experience, that I found a lot of regrets and a lot of difficulty with the decisions they've sometimes had to make, and what could have been if they weren't in the military. And again, of course, that's not everyone's experience, but I just know that there's some unique challenges that are only going to come with being in the military, and that requires people like you who have a heart for it and a passion for understanding those challenges and saying, what do you need specifically versus somebody who's going through something different, and I just know that I can see the pain in some of the guys that I work on my media team, and I can see the identity crisis that you talked about, and I'm sad because I know that they gave so much for our country, and I'm sad to know that there's not more to do to help them. And really quick, I want to hear what you have to say, but I'm going to ask the question too. It just leads me to wonder what I can do to help, what the average person can do to help. But go ahead and say what you're going to say.
I think that question is going to align with what I was going to say. Again, in this, there's a term for this where you're in two different worlds. I'm not always the best with my terminology.
You're fine.
But where you live in this world of personal regret and shame, but yet you have the outside world praising you or trying to praise you and affirm for this decision you made. And I've had some clients talk about that they don't want to hear thanks for your service.
Okay.
Because it's triggering for them, because they say things like, I have nothing to be proud of.
Wow.
So to answer your question, what can we do to let them know our appreciation? I think that's going to vary per individual. And I think it's going to start with, in the best of you can, connecting with the personal relationships. And then just being transparent with what your gratitude is. And if it's anything, it's thanks for taking the risk. Thanks for showing up for the country.
Yeah.
You did. Right, wrong, good or bad, you did. But even then, I mean, that the risk is it's going to land on people differently. I don't know.
Yeah. And I think too, just listening, and really hearing people who have gone through some really hard things, and trying to be really genuine and say in the things that you're saying, and I think that's one thing that doesn't go noticed enough, is just the power of listening to people's stories, listening to people's experiences, and and really trying to be empathetic or trying to relate in any sort of way, just as humanity.
Sure. I might add, listening, balance that with being very discerning about questioning.
Okay. In what way?
Maybe this is just, my experience at the VA. Because when I worked at the VA, I worked with a lot of Vietnam vets who had never, ever talked about their experiences.
Okay.
And one thing that was clear, that they made clear to me, number one, I was an outsider. Cool, fine. They found a lot of support talking to each other, but were very clear that questioning could sometimes trigger them. Again, this idea of because we don't know what shame people are living with. We don't know what regrets they're carrying. And our best of intentions to try to connect with people might trigger that. So I would just say, if people want to talk, let them talk, and maybe not go into a whole lot of deeper level questioning.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And that's why I think conversations like these are good. And I think that just an openness to learn and an openness to understand in whatever way that looks like for somebody is the attitude to have. And you're so right, because some of the experiences are extremely traumatic, extremely hard to even put into words when you've dealt with it for so many years too. I'm sure that it's extremely difficult. So I only hope to have more conversations like these, and to be a better aid to people who have really given so much. So I appreciate that conversation as well. I think that veterans deserve people like you who genuinely take the time to learn and understand, and also help in whatever way you can, obviously with clients that you see, but just in general. So I'm grateful that you have that passion, and I hope that people can see that and take something away from the conversation.
Can I say something else about the questioning? Because I want to say this out loud, and try to maybe normalize this if it needs to be normalized. I've had or known veterans who experienced trauma both personally and professionally. The process for getting that recognition on their medical records, which they need, means that they have to go through questioning. This is my point about the questioning. I have yet to meet someone who didn't find that experience within itself very triggering. Because the line of questioning to document the trauma comes out more like, prove it to me, prove it to me that this happened to you. And for someone who's gone through whatever, be it combat trauma, sexual assault, anything. And unfortunately now with the suicide rates increasing, people are losing their buddies and having to live with that guilt. It's traumatic. And so to have line of questioning used in a way that feels weaponizing, like it's weaponized against them, that's where I would say kind of be just kind of be careful about questioning.
Yeah. Because especially if that meeting depends on whether they get some sort of benefit or some sort of help or and like you said, prove it to me.
Prove it to me. And then it is very direct.
Yeah.
Very direct line of question. It's usually very triggering process. And so again, what can we do? I want to normalize that process for anybody who might be listening to say, you're not being targeted.
Sure.
Just, like, here we are back to this systemic issue that still needs to be fixed. Yeah. But find support in whatever way.
Yeah. That's very true. I'm glad you included that because I think that, again, we don't often think about some of those things. I try to think of myself as the average person, and I'm just like, I never would have thought of that. And hope that, again, more people can kind of see some of those things. So I hope we can wrap up here. I just have a couple more fun and lighthearted questions. First, let's start with a couple of recommendations or next steps, if you have any. Do you have anything any books, it could be related to EFT, it could be related to veterans who are struggling, maybe books or podcasts, anything that comes to mind? And, no pressure if you have 1 or 5.
Let's see, recommendations. So for EFT, the book we recommend it's called Hold Me Tight.
Okay.
And Sue Johnson wrote it. There is, for any couple that's a Christian couple, there's a Christian version of that, and that is something connections, creating connections, maybe. My caution in having a couple read that, go through it, and start a workbook is don't do it without the support of a therapist walking you along, because it could bring up big stuff. Okay. But if you want a better understanding of EFT and the process and the cycle that plays out, that would be a good resource to turn to. Tons of podcasts, again, tons that explain it way better than I did. And I hope I've at least piqued people's curiosity to look it up. Sue Johnson is a lovely lady with this cute little British Columbian accent, and she's fun to listen to. And then there are people that I listen to as a provider, and I just like the way they, again, explain the model. George Fowler is somebody I follow frequently. He is an ex New York Fire Department firefighter turned EFT guru, and I just like his approach. And in terms of for veterans, I don't know that I have a specific recommendation. I would say if anybody is feeling like they need help, try to reach out to the private sector. If you're not getting anywhere in the government sector, reach out. They have expanded benefits that you should be able to better access private care, and keep knocking on the door to find it.
Yeah. Good. All right. So 2 fun questions, and then we will be finished up. So first, I wanted to ask what occupation, and I ask most of these to everybody, okay? So I like to get to hear everybody's answers. It's interesting. It's interesting to know what people say. So what occupation other than your own would you like to try, or would you be doing maybe if you weren't into counseling?
Travel agent.
Okay. Interesting. What about that? You like helping people plan trips? I mean, obviously that's the job.
Yes. Well, yeah. And this is really going to go back to what I'm doing right now, because I think traveling and creating memories with family, again, is another opportunity to create connections with people.
Yeah.
That's not a really good, different job for me. But I mean, it's definitive and it's clear, and it's something that if people need help with, I can give them help. Okay. And there's an answer, and I like that part too. Okay.
Interesting. Do you have a favorite trip? I know you said you like to travel. Do you have a favorite trip or a favorite experience that you've had lately?
Well, my husband and I just went to Bermuda.
Wow.
And I like this past weekend, and think I've really underestimated the absolute beauty of Bermuda. It's my favorite island now that I've ever been to. Okay. It's not part of the Caribbean, but it is. I think of like if I compare Caribbean islands I've been to, I think I'd rather go to Bermuda.
All right,
it's beautiful, absolutely gorgeous.
That's a recommendation. If you're looking for a vacation, go to Bermuda.
It's the food's expensive, but it's a quick flight from Charlotte. It's like 2.5 hours away. Yeah.
Ashley and I are planning a cruise, and we'll maybe thinking about Bermuda. We'll put that on the list maybe.
It is absolutely beautiful.
Oh, interesting.
Absolutely
Last
beautiful.
question. What are some of your favorite movies or TV shows, and why?
Movies and TV shows. I don't even want to say.
Okay.
No, okay.
Is it a guilty pleasure? Is it one that's like I know some people are.
No, it is probably like really embarrassing, and I shouldn't say this about myself, but two of my go-to, I can't ever watch enough. Golden Girls. Every time I watch a Golden Girls episode, I laugh out loud. Every single time.
Such a good show.
Every time. And I've recently introduced so terrible. Recently introduced my kids, and now we're watching them over and over, but the original 1970s Muppet Show.
All right.
I love the Muppets.
Okay.
I love the Muppets. And so just kind of watching them get the humor. I just love it.
Oh, and getting to experience it with your kids.
I love it.
Yeah, to share it with them. That's cool. Very, very cool. Well, thank you, Amanda, for being here virtually, and thank you for sharing some of your thoughts and wisdom, and I'm grateful that you said yes, and grateful that you were able to be a part of this, and I think it went really well. So thank you, and we will see you next time. See you later. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.